Hi, I'm Derri, and as promised, we're going to talk the City Watch. So, where to start? We'll start at the beginning. We'll have our graph. It's still very big and complicated, so we'll take away anything that's not the guards. There's our guards series. And as you can see, it travels the length of the timescale of the disc. Starting now, book 8 with guards, and it goes all the way through to snuff, very nearly the end. And because of this longevity within the series, you see a lot of growth with all of these characters and with the city that their stories are set in. And so I'm going to start by talking about the city, because you kind of need to know about the way the city works before you can truly get the dynamic. The city is old. It's been there a long time, and it has been through fire and flood and destruction and riots and warriors and armies and you name it. It has been destroyed and rebuilt many times. It used to be two cities. It used to be the city of Ankh on one side of the river and the city Morpork on the other. And the river itself plays a part in several of the City Watch books, because it's not so much a stretch of flowing water as it is a stretch of slightly less solid ground. By the time the water makes its way through the city of Ankh-Morpork, it is literally more a case of thick sludge. And it smells. And this is an age before they've figured out how to get light without burning stuff. So it's sooty and it's smoky, so it's gritty and grimy and dusty. It's a dirty old town. It doesn't have a king. It did used to have a monarchy, but the commander of the City Watch at the time wasn't impressed with the horrific acts the king was undertaking and removed his head with an axe. So he's kind of gone down in infamy. But since then, there has been a succession of more and more demented despots, until this one. These despots have overthrown each other by various means over the centuries, and we never find out exactly when the current patrician became the ruler, nor how. We do know that he's doing a good job. The patrician is a graduate of the Assassin's School, and the Assassin's School has since become a guild, because when he came into power, he decided that if you're going to have crime, it should be organised. So he had all of the various organisations in the city form guilds. So we have an Assassin's Guild, we have a Beggars Guild, we have a Thieves Guild, we have a Seamstress Guild, fair ladies of negotiable virtue, and they are all in charge of policing themselves. So if an unlicensed thief gets caught, the Thieves Guild will deal with them, and whatever they decide is appropriate is fine. They're allowed to police themselves. What this ultimately means is that there kind of isn't a lot to do for the City Watch. And at the time of guards, there is still a day watch and a night watch. And the night watch is where they put people who just won't play the game, who won't take the bribes, who won't do as they're told, and who won't just go along with whatever pays best. And that's the state of the city when we arrive in Ankh-Morpork for guards. We're going to follow in guards the night watch, and it's 3 members is all they've got. It's all they've got left, because nobody's joining. Nobody wants to be a part of this defunct organisation. Who wants to be a watchman when there's far better money to be made being a thief? And these 3 men who are left in the night watch, the most senior of them is Samuel Vimes. And in fact, if you've been around BookTube for any length of time, you know that Alan from the Library of Allenxandria is a massive fan of Sam Vimes. Absolutely can do no wrong. I agree with him. Sam Vimes is a delightful character. He's fantastic. That innate core of justice in him invokes such rage at injustice that it gives him real oomph, if you like, in any of the stories he's in. He's fascinating to read. And we meet him drunk in a gutter. That is where his life is at the beginning of Guards. Anywhere from here is up, right? And the other two members of the Night Watch, when we join it, are Fred Colon and Nobby Nobbs. Fred Colon is married, slightly portly. He's been in the watch pretty much his whole career. He sort of bumbles along. He's not particularly intuitive. He's not educated. He's not particularly inspired. He's a graduate of the school of bloke I know in the pub told me. And he's found his groove, Fred. He's like, yep, I'm happy to do this forever. Nobby Nobbs is our third. Nobby is Fred's offsider, and the two of them are very much a comedy duo. They are the classic comedy duo, and Fred is the straight man. Nobby is often the one who comes up with something hilarious that just goes straight over Fred's head. Nobby is short. He has various skin conditions. He is oddly proportioned. He has to carry a certificate to say that he's human. And he's a petty pilferer, which isn't ideal in a watchman. But it's not malicious. It's not nasty. There isn't a nasty bone in Nobby's body. He just has light fingers. And they know this. The petty cash goes missing, they just shake Nobby upside down and catch whatever fell out of his pockets. But he's not a bad man. And that's our Night Watch in our first episode of the City Watch series. They do get joined by a fourth. And the fourth is a man from the country, and he's been sent by his family for the city to make a man of him. And there's a reason for that. His name is Carrot Iron Founderson, which is an odd name for a human, but quite a good name for a dwarf. He's been raised by dwarfs. He was found as a baby at the site of a crash where bandits have overtaken and killed people in a wagon, taken away all their stuff. And the dwarves have taken this baby in because it's winter and you can't leave a baby out in the cold. That's awful. And they just never got round to asking questions about who this baby could be to give him back. So he's grown up in a dwarf mine, believing himself to be a dwarf, which is all well and good. His nickname in Dwarfish means headbanger because he's 6'6", who believes he's a dwarf. He's been brought up by dwarves. He knows all of the dwarf laws, he knows the dwarfish traditions, he follows all of the customs. To all intents and purposes, he is a dwarf. And dwarfs accept that because he knows all of the rules and traditions and customs. The fact that he's 6'6" is just something that doesn't count. Size isn't what makes somebody a dwarf. One of the factors that goes to making a dwarf, however, is a very literal sense of approaching the world. So when his parents finally tell him that he's a human and he really should go to the human city and maybe start behaving like a human, they try and organise him a job, and they write to the city. We want to send our son to the city. What can we do? They get a very odd letter back saying he could be a watchman, and they take that seriously. And they get hold of a very old copy of the laws and ordinances of the cities of Ankh and Morpork. And Carrot's a very earnest young man, and on his walk from the dwarf mine in the country to the great big city of Ankh-Morpork. He's reading and memorising the laws and ordinances of the cities of Ankh and Morpork. And so it's no surprise that when he arrives in the city, he's absolutely horrified by what he finds there, and causes quite a large stir when he arrests the head of the Thieves' Guild and ties him up and leaves him on the street in front of the palace in the middle of the day. This causes a bit of a flap, but it does tell you who Carrot is. He is a very honest young man. He's 6'6", and he's been working in a mine. He's strong, strapping, and not very good at inference. But when you add him to Fred, Nobby, and Mr. Sam, you end up with a little force that sort of catalyses events into something quite magnificent. Because they're up against a dragon. A dragon that doesn't exist. A dragon that can't exist. And a dragon that simply shouldn't exist. And they know this because they approach the expert on breeding dragons, Lady Sybil Ramkin. Because the only dragons who exist anymore are small swamp dragons. And they have a variety of inbred imperfections, but because she's the poshest posh lady in the city, of course she breeds them. Of course she breeds them. So she knows all the things about dragons. Mr. Sam needs to find out about dragons, and that's how he and Sybil meet. And it's absolutely not a spoiler to tell you that they do end up married. It's not a spoiler. They are simply the best couple in fantasy. Absolutely, hands down. I'm actually going to spread that to include all of fiction, because they are marriage goals. Just goals. But it's not a spoiler because it has nothing to do with the plot. It's almost goes unnoticed at all, this developing little friendship, but it's quite charming. And I mention Lady Sybil because she does become part of all of the City Watch stories. So they're up against a dragon. And I can't tell you how the dragon enters the story or how they foil it. I will add that we see the first direct reference to the disc's narrativium, in that a situation occurs where they need the 1,000,000 to 1 chance to work, because 1,000,000 to 1 chances happen 9 times out of 10, and they're trying to figure out if the odds are 1,000,000 to 1. Are they that extreme? And they're trying to stack the odds against themselves to get to that 1,000,000 to 1 mark. And I'm not going to tell you any more than that, because for me that's one of my favourite parts of the book. It always gives me a giggle, and I shall leave that for you to enjoy. But that's Guards. It is the most simple of the City Watch stories, in that those are really the only people that are in it as far as ongoing characters are concerned. The interaction between the 4 of them is what comes together and forms the heart of the City Watch in all of the books to come. That's Guards. Like and subscribe if you thought anything I just said was worth listening to, and comment. Other than that, I think I might love you and leave you, and see you next week.